Good evening and welcome to the Marion Miner Cook Athenaeum. My name is Isabel Lilias and I'm one of your Ath Fellows this year. In the Marvel movie Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler, spoiler alert, cover your ears if you haven't seen it, the first post-credit scene has T'Challa, King of Wakanda, standing at the podium addressing the United Nations. He announces that Wakanda is ready to join the global community and share its knowledge and resources to help build a better world. During his speech, T'Challa says that in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. Audience members saw this statement as a not-so-subtle response to President Donald Trump and his adamant push to build a wall along the border that separates the United States and Mexico. This ending scene, among other elements of the movie, and its connection to current politics had the internet buzzing, turning up the volume of discussions on how entertainment and politics cease to be two separate realms. What does the ending of a movie or television show tell you about the politics of the storyteller, the intended audience, or the time period in which it was produced? Using diverse movie and television clips, our speaker tonight will discuss how endings change, not just based on the needs of a story, but also the prevailing zeitgeist. He will examine contemporary trends in endings, how to interpret their deeper meanings, and reflect on the importance for authors to protect what they believe to be the right ending, even if unpopular. David Tolchinsky is a screenwriter, playwright, and director. He is the chair of Northwestern University's Department of Radio, TV, Film, as well as the founder and director of Northwestern's MFA in Writing for Screen and Stage. Tolchinsky's work often centers on teen subcultures, psychological horror, mental illness, and the figure of the psychiatrist. Increasingly, he's been interested in health and illness in the modern world, especially illnesses that are not easily explainable. He has been commissioned by numerous acclaimed studios, including Touchstone, Disney, MGM, Ivan Reitman's Montecito Pictures, and USA Networks, among others, to write feature screenplays. He was the recipient of the 2014 Illinois Arts Council Artist Fellowship in Literature and was voted Best Director for the New York production of his play, an adaptation of his essay, Where's the Rest of Me? Recently, he co-curated Sick by Seven, 7 plays and films about mental illness at a Red Orchid Theater in Chicago, wrote and co-produced The Coming of Age, which received a silver medal from the Los Angeles Film Review, and he was number 7 on New York City's Film 50 2017 Chicago Screen Gems. Currently, he is directing a psychological thriller, Cassandra, about the memory recovery movement in the 90s, and is working on a play about the rogue 1940s psychologist Wilhelm Reich. Tolchinsky received his undergraduate degree from Yale College and an MFA from the USC School of Cinematic Arts. As always, I must remind you that audio and visual recording are strictly prohibited. Please silence and put away your mobile devices at this time. And please join me in welcoming David Tolchinsky to the Athenaeum.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thanks for all of you for coming. Thanks to our chef for that amazing meal. Let's just watch something and then we'll talk. How about that?
I think we'll get the answer eventually.
Well, more power I gave up trying months ago.
This is flight number 914 from Earth to our planet. We will be taking off in 3 minutes.
Mr. Chambers! Mr. Chambers! Don't get on that ship! The rest of the book, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook!
No! 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 Ah! No! No!
eaten enough, Mr. Chambers. Please, enjoy. Eat hearty.
Please, Mr. Chambers, eat. We wouldn't want you to lose weight.
How about you? You still on Earth or on the ship with me? It really doesn't make very much difference because sooner or later, will all of us be on the menu? All of us.
The recollections of one Michael Chambers with appropriate flashbacks and soliloquy. Or more simply stated, the evolution of man. The cycle of going from dust to dessert. The metamorphosis from being the ruler of a planet to an ingredient in someone's soup. It's tonight's bill of fare from The Twilight Zone.
So the name of this talk is To Serve Man as a Cookbook. I don't know, I thought it was funny. The politics of movie and TV endings. I thought that was a good place to start, just because it's something silly in a way that, how many people know The Twilight Zone from the early, that's fantastic. How many people know what Rod Serling was doing before he was making The Twilight Zone? He was involved with live TV that was incredibly political, kind of anti-McCarthyism, anti-fascism, and his sponsors started saying, wait, we can't be involved with this very political content, so we're canceling the show. And Rod Serling said, great, I'll do this stupid science fiction show. And basically, he did exactly the same politics, but done as a metaphor with aliens and humans. When was this made? 1962? What was happening in 1962? The Cuban Missile Crisis. So this was a case of where possible collaborations and help from an outside force was seen as suspect, and it was a kind of, wondering about, should we be open to outside forces or not? And tonight we're going to see that actually movies and movie makers and studios can convey either a kind of suspicion about the idea of empathy or wondering about outsiders or an embracing of it. So here's what we will talk about in particular. Questions to keep in mind. What do you know about the storyteller? How do endings change, not based on the needs of a story, but also the zeitgeist? What ending trends might there be currently? In general, how do we interpret the deeper meanings of movie and TV endings? And why are the endings of movie and television so often attacked? And as a movie maker, I can tell you the ending is where most of the arguments happen with the studio, filmmakers, screenwriter, directors. And there's my little warning. There might be some sexual or violent content. You might see some endings of movies, so spoiler alert. Okay. There might be sentences that trail off without an ending. There might not be an end. We'll see. So first I wanted to define what do I mean by politics. So, okay, sometimes I mean by conservative versus liberal politics, but I also mean office politics, the politics of gender, the politics of sex relationship style. So this talk is about really what do you believe as a filmmaker and what do you value? So politics broadly. So the importance of endings. The ending equals you. So this is my understanding of how movies work, that in the first part of a movie, a question is raised. So a question could be, will the boy get the girl? Will the girl get the boy? Will the boy and girl overcome social forces so that they can be together? Or will society crush their love? Does that sound familiar? Romeo and Juliet. At the midpoint, someone gives the protagonist the answer to the problem they're wrestling with, but it's too disturbing. So anyone see The Sixth Sense? I see dead people, and he's like, ugh, like he doesn't actually understand it. And then the third part of the movie is where I call it the dark moment, where you choose the wrong thing. So if you're meant to be with this boy or this girl, instead you're marrying the other person, or you're heading back to Iowa or wherever it is that you're from. And then the ultimate ending is, the proper answer, the answer that the filmmaker means. So when I say the ending is you, the question you raise as a filmmaker is really, it's a question you're exploring about what you believe. So do I believe that love can conquer all? Do I believe that family forces or social forces are stronger? Or do I believe, so if you change the ending of the movie, if the boy doesn't get the girl or the girl doesn't get the girl, it basically destroys your message as a artist. And my feeling is that studios often are attacking your ending, especially if your ending is not a happy ending, because they think that happy endings sell better. But to me, that is probably the worst thing that we artists and filmmakers deal with, because really it's what we have to say to the world. The other thing I wanted to say about this is the clip you just saw, I bet you know a lot about that movie just from that 3-minute clip. Like, don't get on that ship to serve man as a cookbook. Can you tell me what might be the question of the movie based on that? If the answer is to serve man as a cookbook, the question is what is to serve man? Is it a guide to helping mankind, or is it something evil? And the answer is, in fact, it's a cookbook, it's something evil. You also probably know that at some point someone pointed the answer out to the protagonist, but he was too stupid to understand it, and he ignored it. You probably know where he chose the wrong answer. Oh, these aliens seem like good people. So my point is, some of you are maybe storytellers in the audience. No? Yes? Oh, thank you. Good one. That in fact, when you know your ending, you actually know a lot about your movie. So, and has anyone heard of the hero's journey? Another version of the same thing is Star Wars is an example of the character goes on a really horrible journey where he has people attacking him, where he's confronting with his darker nature, and eventually he returns with the elixir. The elixir could be love, it could be a treasure. The fact that you believe he returns with the elixir or not is who you are as an artist, and it also tells you what happens at the rest of the movie. So the thing I'm particularly interested in tonight is endings in the other, and by the other I could mean the antagonist, or basically anyone who is not yourself. So here's a movie from the 1950s.
We can't make it without sleep.
Yes, we can.
I went to sleep, Miles, and it happened.
Oh, Becky.
They were right.
I should never have left you.
Stop acting like a fool, Miles, and accept us.
No. Never.
He's in here! He's in here! Get him! Get him!
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky. A moment's sleep, and the girl I loved was an inhuman enemy bent on my destruction. That moment's sleep was death to Becky's soul, just as it had been for Jack and Teddy and Dan Kaufman and all the rest. Their bodies were now hosts, harboring an alien form of life, a cosmic form, which to survive must take over every human man. So I ran as little Jimmy Grimaldi had run the other day. My only hope was to get away from Santa Mira, to get to the highway. to warn the others of what was happening.
Wait! Come on, we gotta go! No, wait, let him go. They'll never believe me.
Help! 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 Wait! Help! 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 Wait! Wait! Stop! Stop! Stop and listen to me! Listen to me! Listen! Listen! Those people that are coming after me, they're not human! Listen to me! We're in danger!
Get out of the street.
Danger!
Go on, get out of here.
You're in danger! Please!
Get out of here.
Go
Go on, get out of here.
Get out of here! All of us! Now listen, listen to me. There isn't a human being left inside of here. Not one. Hey! Hey, stop. Pull up, will you? Pull over to the side of the road. I need your help. Something terrible has happened.
Go on, you drunk. Get out of the street. Get out of here. Go on.
Crazy, you big idiot!
Look! You fools! You're in danger! Can't you see? They're after you! They're after all of us! Our wives, our children, everyone! They're here already! You're next! You're next! You're next! You're next!
So that's not how the movie was released. Who recognizes this movie? Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. What was going on in the United States in the 50s? We had McCarthy accusing people of being a communist. So this is a movie that is exploring the idea. Well, some people have written that this is movies exploring the idea that of these people who are accusing people of other things and attacking us from within. The filmmakers said they were just interested in pod people, that suddenly you wake up and you're an alien. This is how the filmmakers wanted to end it, and what I love about this is you've all seen this person on the highway, right? The crazy person, and I think the filmmakers are wondering, like, who would this person be if we create a story? The studio insisted that they flash forwards that this person is telling the story to the police, and the police are suspicious, and then suddenly they believe him and like, you're right, aliens are taking over our people, and they say, call out the Marines. You understand, that's exactly the opposite of what the filmmakers intended. The filmmakers intended that this thing is happening and people are ignoring it. So by putting that ending that the studio thought that you, the audience, needed to see, it basically destroyed their concept of the world. So moving forwards into the 60s, so, and also, I just did a podcast for your group here. They asked me was there a movie that made me want to make films? The Invasion of the Body Snatchers, when he looks into her eyes and realizes she's no longer human, and that giant close-up was like a moment like, oh, only this could happen in a movie, and I thought it was actually amazing. So, the Star Trek, what was happening in the 60s? Nothing was, no, the 60s, the 60s, civil rights, the idea of people collaborating, a new era, a new possibility, all the things you were talking about in your introduction, that we shouldn't be isolating ourselves, we should be helping one another. And along comes Gene Roddenberry.
We shared consciousness together.
We now know we cannot permit ourselves to exist in your world, my children. Thalesa and I must now also depart into oblivion.
Is there any way we can help you, Simon?
Yes, my son. You can allow Thalesa and me to share your bodies again. A last moment together.
Oblivion together does not frighten me, beloved. Promise we'll be together.
anyway, and they go, oh, and then the aliens leave. So on the one hand, people sharing your bodies are invaders. They should be repelled. They should be destroyed. They're taking us over. And stupid Star Trek, awful, right? But interesting that in this episode, they're giving the aliens permission to take over their body, and rather than the kiss being something horrific, the kiss is kind of this weird shared experiences by two different races and peoples. And by extension, the filmmaker is saying you shouldn't be afraid of the outside world. And again, this is about science fiction, but by extension, it's about outsiders. You have nothing to fear. There's actually the idea of us being able to communicate and collaborate together. So the attitudes towards the other, as revealed in the ending, for me, I think about it as, is it someone you have no empathy for and just want to destroy them, or do you have empathy and are interested? Are you terrified of them, or is there the possibility that this new outside force could offer something to us in an interesting way? Do we want to isolate this outsider, or do we want to incorporate this person? And some of the things I'm talking about, there's an article by Bruce Cohen called The Mummy's Pool, where he divides science fiction and horror by those same dichotomies, that science fiction is we want to embrace the outsider and invite them in. Horror is they're monsters and should be destroyed. But interestingly, this writer, Vivian Sobchak, divides science fiction as it's all about external fights, but horror is about empathy. She actually sees it the opposite way, that the Wolfman, Frankenstein, a lot of monsters, and we're going to see other non-science fiction monsters, we actually feel for them in a much deeper way than we do in science fiction. So anyway, think about this kind of scale as we watch these clips and how these different artists have dealt with the outsiders. So, who recognizes those frames? Anybody? Zane. How about the movie Taken? Anyone seen Taken? Taken? Okay, so Taken is, and I probably put Die Hard in that sphere. Deborah and I we just hired the writer of Die Hard and The Fugitive at Northwestern. The people that take his daughter are not to be understood. We don't care where they came from. We don't care what their upbringing was. They should be shot in the head, right? There's no conversation. Hans Gruber, do we care what, these bad guys? We just want to kill them and return things to the way they were. Similarly, Alien franchise. This is the alien that should be shot out of the ship and burned to death without wondering, like, this is somebody's mother. Where did this alien come from? Why does she want to invade the world? So there's a whole class of movie that the only way you want to deal with people who aren't like yourself is to destroy them. Again, Alien is a really interesting example as well. At the end of Alien that you saw or may have seen, Ripley lives at the end, right? This star, she destroys the alien, she lives, and then there's 20 other movies that come along in the syndication. That was all the studio's idea. The filmmaker's idea was, of course Ripley dies. This alien is too powerful. So do you see how they did damage to this filmmaker, in this case Ridley Scott's vision, by insisting that she not die? So, we've seen two examples of filmmakers have seen their work destroyed by not believing that you're able to deal with an unhappy ending. Next. Sometimes you need to imprison the other, but you have more understanding of who they are. So, anyone recognize that? Of course, Daredevil. Wilson Fisk is his nemesis. Wilson Fisk, of course, has to end up in prison because he's the bad guy, except Wilson Fisk in the movie, in the series, we understand he had an abusive father. That wall that he stared at in the prison cell is like the painting he was forced to stare at while his father was beating up his mother. He was forced to kill his own father. He loves Vanessa, so even though he's a bad guy, he loves this woman. We learn that Wilson Fisk doesn't see himself as the bad guy. He thinks he's doing something good for the city. So that final frame, yes, he's still a bad guy, has killed people, done bad things, has anger management problems, but he's someone that we don't want to just dispose of. We're actually very interested in him. I'm more interested in him than Daredevil. It just seems like some weird, creepy guy like going around, but he's okay too. In terms of the ending, though, that ending says Wilson Fisk is not going to remain contained within that cell, and it's not over. Daredevil's job is not over either. So here's an example of a movie where there is no definitive ending. It's just a pause as we continue. Next. And by the way, in the graphic novel, Wilson Fisk did not have an abusive, or in the comic book, did not have an abusive father. That was all added by the filmmakers for you to have more empathy to see where he has come from that might explain some of his actions. Isolated, the movie Incendies is about a brother and sister's mother dies, and this brother and sister absolutely hate the mother. She's been a terrible mother. She leaves in her will 2 letters for them to deliver, one to the brother they don't know they have, and one to the father. They deliver the letters. Eventually, we follow the mother and we follow them, and they learn that the person that raped their mother in prison was actually her son. So basically, their brother and their father is one and the same person, and they deliver these letters to this guy. So this is the ending of that movie. And we follow the mother and learn all about her, why she was a bad mother, because she suffered so.
Où commence votre histoire?
This is the letter the mother
À
leaves.
votre naissance. Alors elle commence dans l'horreur. À la naissance de votre père. Alors elle commence dans une grande histoire d'amour. Moi, je dis que votre histoire commence avec une promesse. Celle de briser le fil de la colère. Grâce à vous, je réussis enfin aujourd'hui à la tenir. Le fil est rompu. Et je peux enfin prendre le temps de vous bercer. De vous chanter doucement une berceuse pour vous consoler. Rien n'est plus beau que d'être enceinte. Je vous aime. Votre mère, Nawal.
I'll just stop on that shot. So this is directed by Villeneuve. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but the same guy who did Arrival. How many people saw Arrival? So to me, this is a filmmaker that believes in the possibility of, I don't know want to say forgiveness or interaction. This guy is basically the devil, right? He raped this woman in prison, but he's also the son that looked desperately for his own mother his entire life. And I think the filmmaker is saying, no, this person doesn't deserve to be incorporated back into society. He's isolated, he's left by himself. All he has is staring at his mother's grave, but nor does he belong in prison in the way that Wilson Fisk does, because I think he's saying because of his suffering. That's something we can talk about, the fact that he is guilty of rape, but he's also guilty of being destroyed by war too. So he's a victim of war. And then this movie, we were talking at my table about what do I think is a better film adaptation than the novel. This is an adaptation of The History of Violence, where a guy who works in a diner has a family in a little town. People discover he used to be a gangster in Philadelphia. This guy is discovered and goes back to kill all the people that mess with him, and then he returns to his wife and children now that they know that this is the man who has been living in their house, and see what their reaction is. So the graphic novel is all about them escaping from the bad guys that have found out who this guy really is. The movie is all about, will his family accept their father and husband's new identity? I'm absolutely fascinated that the message here is we'd rather have a dirty killer sitting at our table completing this nuclear family than to isolate him or imprison him or obliterate him. I think it's actually, again, it's kind of on the line of how much empathy we have for, and as conveyed by the filmmakers. I also love this ending. I think it's one of the most perfect endings I've seen because there's no dialogue, because it can only work in a movie. I love how the little girl like sets his place backwards. Did anyone notice this? Because he's the devil. I love how the son gives him the meatloaf. That's meatloaf is great. And then the whole thing is based just on eye contact, that when his wife looks up at him and accepts him with her eyes, he knows that he's been accepted. But anyway, I'd be interested in your thoughts about that. We have, you know, does this guy deserve to be forgiven? Do we want to be that open to outsiders? And then we have this movie, Fruitvale Station. Does anyone know this movie? Okay, this is the ending. So, Fruitvale Station, got friends out on a New Year's Eve, having a good time, are mistaken by and are suddenly mistaken for, you know, criminals, and this one guy is shot by the police. No one's heard of the story. So this is a case where he is not the other. He is mistaken for the other, and in fact, it's a movie where there is no antagonist, no outsider, but in this movie, it is exploring the idea of what happens when we see people who are like ourselves as outsiders, and in fact, if there is an antagonist, it's the police, not this young man. And then in terms of story structure, that's him there, in the 3/4 of the way through the movie, he actually has a very good interaction with this white guy where they realize the two of them both love their spouses or girlfriends. They're both struggling with poverty, have both done bad things in their life, and we think that there's the possibility of connection, but instead things turn like this. Although we were talking at our table, and at the podcast I was doing this afternoon, is there movies that can actually, by their endings and by their existence, help change the world and actually give people new ideas? I would hope movies like Fruitvale Station and maybe Moonlight, looking at stories and trying to understand people more deeply and what went wrong, will actually help people. So, other examples, empathy is Frankenstein. Other examples is Alien, Taken, Die Hard, Silence of the Lambs, no empathy. And then I'm fascinated by what's changed in terms of our concept of sacrifice. Does anyone know what that movie is? Okay, does anyone want to tell me what the ending looks like in Casablanca? Rick loves this woman. He's gonna get on a plane out of Casablanca and go be with her. Instead, he tells Victor, you take her, because she's necessary for your work, and I'll hang out with this guy, but let's see what it looks like. So it's very weird and interesting. So.
Round up the usual suspects.
Well, Rick, you're not only a sentimentalist, but you've become a patriot.
Well, really, it seemed like a good time to start.
I think perhaps you're right.
Might be a good idea for you to disappear from Casablanca for a while. There's a free French garrison over at Brazzaville. I could be induced to arrange a passage.
My letter of transit? I could use a trip. It doesn't make any difference about our bet. You still owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses? Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So, some people would say it's not History of Violence, it's this is the best ending in the world. And I do love this ending. It's great. It's unexpected. It's, you know, you think he's going to get on the plane with the woman he loves. Instead, he realizes he has to sacrifice his love for the good of getting back into the war and fighting for what he believes in. Other movies that were in the 40s, It's a Wonderful Life. Anyone know that movie where a guy never gets to travel to go to semester abroad or all the things that we get to do. Instead lives in his little town and comes to realize just having stayed in the town, that's why his life was valuable, the fact that he had sacrificed. Look what's happened to movies since then. Let's see, Erin Brockovich. Erin Brockovich sacrifices her life to help kids with cancer. And then, at the end of the movie...
Right. Well, it's a little more complicated than Hinckley, so let me do that. Well, tell her I'm not a lawyer. That may help. Great. Why don't you just give me the address now, just in case? Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Bye. Oh, what's up?
I have your bonus check.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Now, I want you to be prepared. His figure's not exactly what we discussed.
Why not?
Because after careful consideration, I felt that figure was not appropriate. Although you may not agree, you have to trust my experience and judgment.
You want me to trust you? Do me a favor, Ed. Don't use big words you don't understand.
It's a complicated issue, Erin. You're not
I did a job.
lawyer.
You should reward me accordingly. It's not complicated. You know what? That is the fucking problem. All you lawyers do is complicate situations that aren't complicated. Do you know why people think all lawyers are backstabbing, blood-sucking scumbags? Because they are. And you know, I cannot believe that you were doing this to me now when I'm up to my ass in Kellerman plaintiffs, which, by the way, looks like it's going to be double the amount that we had in Hinckley. And you expect me to go out there, leave my kids to be looked after by strangers, knock on doors, get these people to trust you with their lives, and the whole time you're screwing me. I want you to know something, Ed. It is not about the number. It is about the way my work is valued in this firm. It's about how no matter what I do, you're not...
As I was saying, I decided that the figure you proposed was inappropriate, so I increased it. Do they teach beauty queens how to apologize? Because you suck at it.
Thank you.
So interesting. Problematic to me is that the idea of sacrifice for its own good has been replaced by first you sacrifice, but you still expect to be given a check for $2 million. Nick Cage movie, The Family Man, where he gives up his career as a stockbroker to go back into this alternate universe where he marries the woman he loved, and he gets to be a stockbroker again and get back all the money that he lost by sacrificing to get the woman he loved. I'm sure you can think of other movies where something about our zeitgeist right now is sacrifice is not seen as an end unto itself. It's a good thing that you sacrifice, but we still expect to be rewarded. So I'd be interested in your feelings about that. I'm also intrigued by the politics of that scene where a very strong woman who's talking, standing up for herself, is basically shut down by a man to the point where he has to say, you suck at apologizing. On the other hand, the movie ends with a very strong shot of her in control, continuing her very important work, helping these kids who've been injured by this water. And those of you know Steve Soderbergh, and his career basically was launched by this movie. I relate this movie to this movie for some reason. Skimpily clad woman negotiating her outfits, and Erin Brockovich is not taken seriously because of her outfit, but still wears dresses the way she wants to dress. Why did they dress her like that? But on the other hand, look at her face. I understand why this movie has been so successful and so important to so many people, because it ends with this shot of this very powerful woman in control. So again, the politics are very difficult. And then I'm just going to roll through. It's not just the politics of what happens, it's how it happens. In Sunset Boulevard, you're overwhelmed with the madness of this woman, and you don't get to, here's the very last shot. That says to me, the filmmaker is saying, this story does not end. You are overwhelmed by my main character's insanity. She will remain inside you, and my story will continue. What's this movie? The Graduate. The Graduate ends with these two wacky people on a bus, right? Let's see. First, I'll have an affair with the mother. That wasn't a good idea. Then I'll decide I need to marry the daughter. That sounds like a pretty good idea. What? This guy's a creep, basically. You probably show this at the end of your, it's a creep. But look at their eye contact. These people are going to remain married for maybe a week, and then they're going to get divorced. And I love that the ending is they're on a bus to nowhere. We don't know how this is going to end. So again, the story continues. So in the 70s, you would see a bunch of endings like this where you didn't have to have the very wrapped up ending where it's all spoon-fed to you. In the 70s, and we were talking about European films, you actually could have the idea that we're not sure what's going to happen, and that you're all thinking about the kind of uncertainty of the story that's been told. Anyone see Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene? No? Okay, so this is a few years ago. She's a woman who was in a cult and gets rescued from the cult, but still has visions of the man that led the cult. Her sister is taking her away to see a psychiatrist, but this car appears behind her. She has no idea if she's just imagining it or if this guy is about to overwhelm the car and attack them. There's a whole series of movies now where you're not sure what happened or what's going to happen, and I think that's actually a really cool thing because it's telling us that they trust that you're able to deal with uncertain endings. This one you must have seen. It Follows. No. Oh, good in the back. You have sex, and then you're followed by somebody until you have sex with somebody else. So the end of this movie is this man is following them. We have no idea whether he's actually an imagined character that's going to murder them or some demonic force, or whether it's just a guy following them. So I'm excited by endings where you're not sure what's happening. Reversed is Memento is a movie that's told backwards and ends with the beginning. Again, is pushing up against the idea of a classic, all embracing ending. And Arrival.
You know, I've had my head tilted up to the stars for as long as I can remember. You know what surprised me the most? It wasn't meeting them. It was meeting you.
I forgot how good it felt to be held by you.
So the trick of this movie is you think this is a professor who's living in the aftershadow of the death of her daughter from cancer, only to realize she's been empowered by aliens and she can actually see into the future. So the ending again is the beginning of the story where she meets this person and actually has the daughter who's going to die from cancer. It happens at the end of the movie, but it refers back to the beginning. And to me, that's really interesting. Again, it's kind of this circular idea of a story. It doesn't have to all wrap up and be something that says there's good and bad, there's beginnings and endings. It's more like where it's an evolving story. Game of Thrones, there's a whole class of endings where the person you love suddenly dies. And to me, that's just as interesting because, again, it says you're smarter than we think you are. We're taking a conventional story structure where you think you're going to follow one guy who's going to turn into the king, and we'll just murder him like halfway through the series and leave you to wonder what's going to happen next. So the very end of this, just let me see the last 2 seconds. So funny, that's right. But what's interesting is the filmmakers don't roll music over the end credits. Normally they do, and I think, again, they're saying we're not going to release you from the pain of this movie. We're going to make you think about it, that it's not over. And a ghost story is basically a very long story over 1,000 years. A guy who's a ghost haunting a house eventually has peace. So I want to end with the idea that endings to me can convey hope or hopelessness. Hope is in Some Like It Hot when this guy takes off his outfit and says, I'm a man. This guy says nobody's perfect, and I think this was the first movie that said it's okay to be different, that you can be gay, you can be trans, There is the idea of, again, incorporating difference into our society. Moonlight said to me, you can live a horrible life and be closeted. You can have horrible things happen to you and your family, and there is a possibility that you could have a moment of happiness. 12 Years a Slave says you could be stolen, be turned into a slave, not because of fault of your character, just because the world is a horrible place, and somehow this guy is returned to his family. Although traumatized, there is the possibility that we can prevail. And Game of Thrones, this woman steps into the fire and is supposedly to die with her husband, but instead comes out of the fire with dragons. To me, that's about the possibility of magic, and that this filmmaker believes that we can't be beaten by physics, that in fact magic and hope is always present. Sullivan's Travels was about suffering but ended with a happy ending. The Descent had two, and anyone know The Descent is a little horror movie that women are trapped in a cave with monsters. The European ending is they don't get out and they die. The studio said that's too disturbing for Americans, so they put a different endings where this one woman escapes. My sentiment and my hope is thinking about all these different endings and the idea of empathy, incorporation, fighting against classic story structure, and embracing a sad ending means we are embracing the idea that people are complex and are capable of a much higher level of thinking. So endings are important. Knowing the ending means you know the beginning, the midpoint, dark moment of your story. Endings reveal how much empathy we have for the other. Endings reveal whether we value sacrifice as enough of a reward. Endings reveal whether we long for closure or we can deal with uncertainty. Endings reveal whether we're strong enough to accept complexity, and protect your endings if you're an artist. And here's endings that we didn't get to, or some that we did, and that's it. So, thank you. Questions?
As always, please raise your hand if you have a question, and Isabel or I will come to you with the microphone.
Hi, my name is Shreya. Thank you so much for this talk. I'm here. It was really interesting. I have a question about the French New Wave films and like films of Jean-Luc Godard, but also the recent movie Call Me By Your Name, which has been referenced in some articles that I read as a new wave movie. And the end of the movie specifically, I'm not super sure.
What was the I missed the name.
Call Me By Your Name.
Oh, Call Me, okay.
Yeah, and at the end where it's like a 7-minute just Elio just staring out into the fire, crying while Sufjan Stevens just sings beautifully. And it struck me, it really struck the entire theater when I watched it like in Claremont. And I was just wondering, like, how do you explain like an ending where the emotions are so almost like it's osmosis. It just moves throughout the theater and just stays with you for the rest of hopefully your life.
Okay, so I can't comment on that movie because I actually haven't seen it, but I can comment on movies that stay with you. And again, that is the goal of a filmmaker, is to have it stay with you. So that's what I'm objecting to, is the idea of a wrapped up story that is all processed for you and the bad guy and Taken. Again, I enjoyed Taken, but it's all processed for you and the world is returned to the way it should be, versus The Graduate and other movies where you're not sure what's going to happen next, and so you're left to process the emotions. Or the Game of Thrones, whatever you think of that show, it leaves you with a sense of displacement where the things you could depend on, you can't depend on, and again, you're having to continue to process that and think about it. So again, every movie that would affect you, what would affect you might be something different for somebody else. Incendies, that movie I showed you with that guy at that gravestone, I have not stopped thinking about that movie. I saw it months ago. The horror of what happened with that family, but also that image of him just standing looking at his mother's gravestone. You don't know what's going to happen to that guy. So that's my answer. Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much.
Question. This is the politics part of your lecture. How do you feel about the major studios acquiescing to the Chinese government's request, but it's not really a request, that they are now going to have to approve all scripts if that studio wants to release a movie in their country?
I'm not for it. I mean, simply, you know, we have a campus in Doha and in Qatar, and the reason we're there, we said the only reason we're going to have a campus if we have the right not to be censored in any way. So, you know, I think if a government is trying to have that kind of control, it's like the studio, it's a different, maybe more evil form. I will say that, you know, great work has come out of censorship. There's you know, filmmakers who work in Iran who have done the most amazing work because they're having to be trickier about what they're saying. So it's not that, again, I wouldn't wish censorship on people, but people find very creative solutions when it does happen. But yeah, you know, theoretically, no, a government should not be telling us what scripts that should be approved. But they are, I know. Yeah. 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 So that's a broader discussion about trade relationships and power structure. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
Sure.
I had a quick question about book-to-movie adaptations. So how do you stay true to how you envision the ending should be when you already have like a fan base or like, you know, books or a book series that already have an established arc or a way that,
That's
you know, the author
a
intended to
very
end?
difficult question because you know, the movie that I did that got made, Girl, is based on a novel, and I wanted to stay true to the novel as much as I could, but I had to make it into a movie, and that means coming up with a different language like, you know, History of Violence that works as cinema. I think that it is a negotiation between the fan base and the filmmakers and what you're able to do. And I've seen when fans have too much power, they're not filmmakers, and they in fact can destroy the work that they themselves care about. So yes, there's bad filmmakers, but I would hope that if someone understands to me, it's what's the question that is being explored in a work, and as long as you remain true to that, and if there's particular scenes that people need to see this because they recognize that line, I think other than that, filmmakers should have the leeway to do what they have to do to translate a work from one medium to another. But it's a very complex question, and I know you've probably been pissed off about some adaptation that didn't have this, and then, you know, but the filmmaker would say it just didn't work. So.
Thank you so much for your talk. My question is on, so you mentioned earlier that sometimes a studio would want to change the ending to a happy ending to make it, you know, more palpable or something. But do you ever find a sense of like a writer having a really dark ending, less for the sake of the question and more for the sake of, you know, just being really dark or kind of not shying away from I feel like I've experienced that in other like writing workshops, and I'm wondering if is that something that happens at that level or not really?
What you're talking about is you feel manipulated, you feel unduly tortured, traumatized by the film, and you don't feel the question or the message warrants it. You know, we have a colleague who writes violent and sexually explicit work, and I'm always asking him, do we have to see that explicit scene? What are you getting from it? And again, it's like the question up here, there's no right or wrong answer, but the fact that you bristled at it, you might be detecting some kind of, oh, this will sell, in the same way that happy endings will sell. A dark, cool ending or a really violent ending might sell better versus what is the ending that the work actually demands based on the art of what they're doing. So I'd say trust your instincts, and you know, what movie are you talking, is there a particular movie that you're thinking about? Well, that's true. Again, you're saying the flip side of what I'm saying is like, let's embrace the not happy ending, but then if you're like, oh, that's cool, that made some money, let's do that some more, then that's not good either. So you're right. So the human centipede. That was too gross, right? Right, yeah.
Hi, super quick. Has there been a movie that's kind of, the ending has boggled you? Because I need movie recommendations.
That's a good, yeah, of course. Any of the sequels, any movies, you feel like they're set up for the sequel, and you feel like, again, I think Alien is a great example of an ending that felt like this was manufactured to create a syndication versus like, of course, this alien that cannot be beaten is going to destroy this woman. She's valiant. She put up a good fight, but she should have died. So there's, that's what I would point to just because I'm thinking about. How about you? Is there an ending that, you? You don't know? Okay. I think, again, when it doesn't feel organic to the story that's being told, that it feels tacked on for business reasons, or it's manipulative, I think those are the things that bother us.
Hi, thanks so much for your talk. Towards the beginning, you were talking a lot about sci-fi and how it tends to kind of have these political messages. So I was wondering if you think that does a certain genre lend itself better to political messages, or is it just has in the past tended to that sci-fi really focuses on?
I think the point of the talk is that I'm thinking about these authors that start writing about science fiction horror, but I think a lot of what they're saying is as applicable to any other genre, and some of what The Twilight Zone looks like a drama until you find out it's science fiction. But I definitely think horror lends itself to thinking about society and what we're afraid of. Science fiction, again, is the flip side. What do we think is possible and exciting, and then depending on your view, also problematic. So those are the two genres that, but I also think comedy, I am a big believer in a lot of my students that are now working in late night comedy for Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert. I think comedy is tricky, that you can say a lot about politics and about the world, whether you're on Saturday Night Live making fun of Donald Trump or whoever, in a way that is non-threatening, but ultimately might get your message across more and engage more people from different perspectives. So I would point you to comedy as another place that is very good. So, thanks for your question.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk.
Sure.
As a filmmaker, have you noticed that you have an ending in mind and then work your way towards it, or like, do you start from the beginning and then come to an end?
Yes, to all. It depends on, I think what's great about filmmaking is you never know where you're going to begin a story. I think as a screenwriter for hire, knowing the ending means you can write your screenplay in 12 weeks. But to me, it's more exciting sometimes writing a play or a screenplay where I don't know what the ending is, because that feels more organic. Again, I'm letting my characters come alive and telling me what they need to do. And sometimes I'll come up with an ending and realize the characters don't want that to be the ending, and you have to listen to your characters, because if you've really done your work, they're alive, they're real people, and they're telling you what they will do and what they won't do. I mean, I shot this psychological thriller I just shot, had one ending where it goes to, I'll just say, it goes to black, and then thinking about what we really wanted to say, and now it ends on a face. Because I think, like Sunset Boulevard, we wanted the feeling of madness to convey, and that didn't come to me until after I had shot the movie. So you never know. So where do your paper ideas come? It's usually part of it, and then that's the point of, if you know any part of your movie, if you understand movie making, you can point yourself to probably other moments that might happen. And again, if you fight against that, it's called a formula. That's a bad word. If you don't put the ending that you think that formula should demand, it's interesting. So I like these charts because they give me something to fight against.
Thank you so much for your talk. I was just wondering, you didn't really mention, sorry, I lost my voice a little bit, but I was just wondering, since in your talk you didn't really talk about the portrayal of certain marginalized communities in films and how that affects sometimes the ending and how we portray certain groups in the ending. And I was wondering whether or not you think, if there is a political message more in the casting rather than the plot, if you think there should be a certain move towards having a certain ending to portray certain groups in a certain way. I'm thinking more along the lines of, there's a philosopher that I read in class that kind of has this prescription for what he calls like positive propaganda, and that's to make sure that certain groups that have been portrayed inappropriately in the past are kind of made up for with more positive portrayals of those communities in the news, and I'm assuming it could also apply to films as well, and I was wondering maybe what your take is
again,
on
it's
that.
a complex subject. I included Fruitvale Station, Moonlight, of people who have been victimized by not being, part of a certain sector of the population. I work with playwrights, and we have many discussions about casting as, do you have to cast a member of a particular, race when you tell a story, or is it just the best actor? I don't have there's no easy answer, and also we have discussions about, as a white male, am I only able to write about, the sector that I'm part of? What if I want to tell a story about an Islamic person, an African American person, and there's people in our department that some would say, of course you have to write those stories because it promotes empathy, which I think at the core of this is what this talk is about, trying to understand these other peoples. And then there's people who would say, but if you tell that story, then we're not getting to tell our own story. So I don't have a particular answer in terms of the ending. I think all people should be represented. People should have a right to tell their own stories. And the ending is, I do think, the same way I bristle against pat endings or formulaic endings, but I don't think we want to only see positive portrayals of certain groups of people. We want to see monsters and heroes and all kinds of people, but I think if they're all struggling with internal struggles or their past, I think that's interesting. So I hope that we're not going to replace a lack of portrayal with just like, we'll always see this person as the hero. And I thought, whatever you thought of Black Panther, I thought they were trying to explore that subject in a very pop way about, we're not all great people, we're guilty of bad things as well. And Moonlight, fantastic. You have a drug dealer, but a drug dealer who loves this kid, and is devastated that he's been giving his mother drugs. That's interesting to see that character on stage. That means you're really trying to understand each other.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have this evening. Please join me in one more time thanking Dave Tulchin.
Thank you. Thanks.